If you keep crying at this empty grave, they will kill your child, just like they tried to kill her. Ricardo halts. The rain washes away his tears, mingling them with silent anguish. Another day, another morning, another scream trapped in his throat. Before the cold gravestone bearing Maria's name, his wife, everything felt final. Until that voice, small, hoarse, direct. He turns. Julia, a street girl, her face dirty, barefoot, yet with a gaze that carries more wisdom than one might expect. There she stood, holding a yellowed piece of paper. A photo. Maria's face, alive and smiling, missing, not dead, on the run. She was alive. The words die in his mouth, choked by a tide of emotions. The world, which had been shattering around him, suddenly gains a new perspective. What happened to Maria? What drove her away? Julia, with her childlike voice, begins to weave the threads of the mystery, fragments of secret meetings, coded messages, always shadowed by an imminent danger. Maria was fleeing, not only for herself, but for their child, Pedrinho, the heir who remained blissfully unaware of the peril surrounding him. Ricardo scrutinizes the shadows gathering around his own brothers, Maurizio and Fernando. Who could believe that the threat did not come from outside, but from within the household? The treachery slithered slowly, like a serpent, poised to strike when least expected. Driven by the need for truth, Ricardo hires a private investigator. The atmosphere thickens with uncertainty. With each revelation, he sinks deeper, surrounded by a sea of clues. Forged records, clandestine financial transactions, attempts to access their son's accounts. Most alarming, evidence of poisoning. Maria had known everything beforehand. She had uncovered the deadly scheme concocted by her brothers-in-law and made a radical decision to fake her own death and vanish, a ghost to protect her child. The thought reverberates in the emptiness of Ricardo's mind. Meanwhile, Julia becomes his ally, not for money, but through a hidden bond that ties their fates together. With each new clue unearthed, Ricardo's pain intertwines with the regret of not having seen it sooner. At last, the truth begins to take shape. The struggle within the home breeds monsters that are familiar, known, beloved. Listening to Julia, it feels as if each word is a torn fabric, revealing the decay hidden in the family's seams. The trap is set. Ricardo feigns weakness. He pretends to be still caught, in a mourning that never ends. While his brothers spin their webs, the detective observes them in silence and patience. With every breath, the tension mounts. The confrontation draws near, and one fateful day, at the peak of it all, Maria reappears. Ricardo's pulse races in sync with his hope, but he questions, will the truth be bearable? Before everyone, Maria emerges, alive, defying the skeptical gazes. The shock is palpable. It's as if time has stopped. Mauricio and Fernando scramble to cover their tracks, manipulating, slipping through their own lies. But the truth is unyielding. With evidence in hand, head held high, and the strength of a mother who did what she had to do, Maria reveals each of their malevolent schemes, the greed disguised as familial love. If this caught you off guard, subscribe to the No Mercy badge and hit the like button now. When the police arrive, the masks that were held so carefully come crashing down. There's no salvation for the brothers, vulnerable and exposed. They are the shadows of Ricardo's life, which finally dissipate. And as Pedrinho's life is secured, the reunion between Ricardo and Maria becomes a painful dance between love and loss. The embrace is heavy, filled with a sorrow that cannot be erased. Time, that cruel thief, does not return. Trust, on the other hand, always leaves its mark. Julia watched from a distance, the girl possessing more strength than any adult. And Ricardo understood. Sometimes the truth emerges from voices no one wanted to hear. With his gaze fixed on the woman he thought he had lost, a certainty washed over him. Love may endure beyond death, but betrayal, oh, that can truly end him. Ricardo sat at the table, his gaze lost in the pages of a report that seemed more like a deadly enigma. Words danced before him, blurred as his mind raced. A portrait of Maria, the woman he had buried with hopes and promises of eternal love, materialized in his memory. In an instant, the shadow of betrayal, stemming from the least expected source, began to take shape on the walls of that oppressive room. Beside him, the phone vibrated incessantly. It was the detective, a shadowy figure yet committed to the task. "You need to see this," the message read. Ricardo didn't hesitate. He stood abruptly, the chair creaking under his weight. The echo merged with his doubts. In the detective's office, the atmosphere was thick with the smoke from the investigator's cigarette and the silence of an impending revelation. "Here are the recordings we managed to obtain," the man declared, pressing play on outdated equipment. Mauricio's voice unfolded through the speakers. "We need to put an end to this. The boys must not find out." Ricardo's heart stopped. Each word was a blade. What did boys imply? What did the story they needed to end reveal about his own life? Images in his mind began to align, forming a macabre puzzle. He recalled family gatherings, disguised smiles, and loyalty promises that were mere facades. Each detail now pulsed with a new perspective. The furtive glances exchanged between Mauricio and Fernando, conversations that abruptly ceased in his presence. He was cornered. Then Julia appeared again. The scent of wet earth and an aura of mystery surrounded her. The girl was not merely a witness. She was a portal to the truth he needed to grasp. "She never told me everything," she said, staring at the ground as if the words caused her pain. "But I knew she feared them." Julia's revelations became the foundation of his obsession. Not just someone who had fled, but a mother doing everything to protect her child. The image of Pedrinho, a naive little boy caught in this horror, sliced through Ricardo like a knife. "They are coming for him," he thought, his instinct for survival intensifying. Surprises kept unfolding. With every path taken in the investigation, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The suspicious accounting of the family businesses, the falsified property records, even a file found in a forgotten drawer, correspondence between Mauricio and a doctor implicating something Ricardo never imagined. Poisoning, a detailed plan, calculated to eliminate any heirs. A web of betrayal woven with the collaboration of those who should have been by his side. With the gathered information, Ricardo knew it was time to act, but the tension was palpable. Every step could be his last, and he couldn't afford to fail. Julia, oddly confident, offered a final warning. "If you get too close, they will unite." The eyes of a lost boy and a fearless girl seemed to search for answers in the shadows at that moment. The trap began to take shape. Maintaining composure was essential, portraying himself as a broken man, which required a carefully crafted facade. The detective, with his manipulative skill, helped orchestrate a meeting. A family gathering, an event where everyone would be present and everything would unfold before them. Ricardo took a deep breath. Amid that pain and deceit, a spark of hope still burned. His son's freedom. With the plan in mind, he readied himself for the showdown with his brothers, like wasps in a nest about to be disturbed. He awaited the perfect opportunity, a moment when their faces would become more than mere visages. It was up to him to expose the truth, the betrayal and hypocrisy lurking beneath their smiles. Because in the end, love and family were a battlefield, and forgiveness an unwaged war. But the day approached, bringing with it a revelation that could change everything. The game was afoot, and Ricardo was finally resolved to play to win. The clock in the conference room struck 11. Ricardo surveyed the faces of Mauricio and Fernando, so similar to his own yet, at the same time, so blatantly different. The room was thick with tension. He masked his anger, focusing on what truly mattered. The revelation regarding Maria's disappearance started to shape his strategies. the absence of his wife, unfolded like a nightmare. Not as a mourning, but as a mystery he was determined to unravel. "Do you have something to tell me?" Ricardo asked, his voice contained but firm. The brothers' eyes met, a fleeting glance of doubt before Mauricio attempted a dismissive smile. "What does it change, brother? Maria is gone. Do you want a proper burial or a farewell party?" He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Fernando, silent, observed, calculating the next moves. Ricardo clutched the report. The detective had handed him like it was a weapon, each page burned with the truth his brothers were trying to bury. Forged documents, records of bank transactions in mysterious accounts, a pattern repeating like a sinister song. With every line read, his stomach twisted into knots. The brothers were not merely accomplices, they were predators, and he was the prey. The following day, with the help of Julia, the street girl, hidden meetings began to take shape in his mind. She had more information than anyone could imagine. Her clarity challenged her youth. Maria always had a plan. It was in her mind. Her words pierced into his life like a sharp knife. She cannot be found. Hiding isn't just a choice, it's a necessity. The pieces began to fit together. Maria knew she was being watched, ensnared by a web not woven from love, but from ravenous interests. And while he sought the truth, his brothers were engaged in a clandestine game of their own design, plotting their next move. What can they do to stop me? Ricardo wondered, a new thirst for justice igniting within him. A new meeting was forming. The trap was being set behind the scenes. He orchestrated a family event, a dinner that would serve as a battlefield. Every word, every gesture, every glance would carry deeper significance, as if love were the bait and betrayal, the hook. "Let's see who can't control their emotions," he murmured to himself, allowing a dark smile. On the day of the dinner, the dining room transformed into an extravagant war zone. The sweet aroma of tomato sauce and basil filled the air, a complete irony. The table was full, glasses clinking, laughter forced. But soon, all would fall silent as the truth began to unravel. Was this about family, Ricardo thought, or about power? Ricardo threw out a simple provocation. "I remember how you criticized the way Maria managed the inheritance. So meticulous down to the last cent, she was always cautious, until she vanished." The tension at the table became palpable. The brothers exchanged nervous glances as the pieces began to drop. He had succeeded. A small crack in Mauricio's armor. "You're missing the mark, Ricardo," Fernando attempted, though his voice quivered. Heart racing, Ricardo turned fully. "I'm going to need you to tell me where she is. We need her to bring the truth to light. Or do you want me to dig deeper into my investigation? Or perhaps you have something to hide?" The silence that followed was nearly deafening. Ricardo began to see the cracks in the trust he once had in them. It wasn't just love at stake, but his son's very survival. He had touched a sensitive nerve, and the truth was about to rise to the surface. "Put aside that greed talk, Ricardo. Do you really think Maria will return?" "The past can't be undone," Mauricio shouted, shattering the stillness. Fear was evident beneath the anger, and Ricardo smiled. It was time to end the game. With a swift motion, he pulled the last card from his sleeve. A copy of the report detailing the transactions between them and the suspicious accounts. "If you won't tell me the truth, the police will have to assess your honesty," he stated. And there, amid that mournful banquet, Ricardo knew trust would crumble to dust. The night would stretch long, and darker secrets would begin to surface. He was on the verge of receiving the answers he had long sought, not through love, but through revelations of betrayals lurking behind familiar smiles. Love and trust were a step away from dissolving, and the truth, already within reach, awaited to be unveiled. Ricardo stared at the table, his mind still clouded by the revelations. The weight of betrayal felt like poison slowly coursing through his veins. He listened to the whispers around him, Mauricio and Fernando, their voices laced with feigned innocence. What else were they hiding? Every movement of the brothers' hands was a remnant of a dirty game. He envisioned the clandestine meetings in their offices, frowns reflecting nefarious plans, financial transactions hidden in the subtext of what should have been a legacy, Pedrinho's future at risk, all due to the greed of those meant to protect him. "We take you seriously, Ricardo," Mauricio insisted, his face flushed. "This is just a misunderstanding." But the hesitation was clear in his eyes, a flicker betraying guilt. Ricardo noticed beads of sweat forming a map of anxiety. The greatest mysteries often reside in the subtlest reactions. A misunderstanding. He couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. A misunderstanding. That phrase sounds like a mask. Pathetic. The wordplay had become laughable. "Oh, so you think you can fool me this way?" Fernando, ever more cunning, tried to adjust his tone. "We're here to support you, brother. With the loss." "Loss? Or are you just waiting for the right moment to strike? To leave my son on some front line? What else don't I know? What else has Maria kept from me?" Tension sliced through the air, heavy. The brothers exchanged glances, and in that moment Ricardo realized their words were as sharp as knives, bandits disguised in familial skin, and that contrast of mourning with all those false smiles and empty promises became unbearable. As the conversation morphed into a dance of accusations, an intrusion made itself known. A security staff member, called by Fernando, interrupted the discussion, urgently handing Ricardo a cold envelope. The numbers, mentioned by the private investigator at the start of the inquiry, were now there, clearly coded. Records showing the extent of the brothers' complicity. "Look at this," he said, his voice trembling. "You never believed they were out to take you down." Silence became deafening. As he opened the envelope, his heart nearly stopped. Documents laid bare each stealthy step, every financial maneuver aimed at eliminating his son, a sinister framework emerging in a plot of murder. You don't expect a brother to do this, you think? Of love and protection, but in reality, they were scheming deadly illusions. The portrait was cruel. Mauricio and Fernando, complicit, loyal only to the greed that drove them. How many times had trust turned into a weapon? How often had love intertwined with poison? The truth clamored to be heard, even as it longed to remain muted beneath familial lies. "The son is the target, not me." The statement echoed like a haunting refrain. He raised his voice, the intensity nearly causing the lights to flicker. "You've always played the dirtiest game. He looked at Fernando. "We're planning an ambush." Fernando, pale as a specter, struggled to shake off the accusations. "You have no proof." But his voice, now merely a whisper, betrayed the chasm of guilt. "That's not true. Not true." Ricardo turned to Mauricio. "When Mario goes after Pedrinho, who's going to take the fall?" The revelation hung in the air, and Mauricio hesitated just a moment longer. In that fleeting instant, a connection formed. They were not just brothers, they were predators cloaked beneath skin. And this ignited the mechanism of a new sequence of events yet to unfold. A notification on his phone, a final message from the detective alarming. "I'll meet you tonight. It's time." Time seemed to slip through his fingers. He would need to devise a plan and see it through to the end. Ricardo took a deep breath, feeling his pulse quicken, and a certainty settled within him. The path to the truth was being paved, though stained with betrayal and despair. The shadows of his brothers, which had long anchored him, now became the chains and shackles that bound him. A newfound resolve surged. There would be no forgiveness. And as he locked eyes with Mauricio, everything became clear. He wasn't just fighting for his son's life. He was battling for his own soul, nearly lost in the darkness of deceit. Adrenaline coursed through Ricardo's temples as he prepared for the final confrontation. The detective had revealed vital information about his brother's plans. Information brokers. They were manipulating everything around them, as if every piece on this board was under their control. Ricardo's heart pounded like a war drum. breaking the silence in his mind. That crucial meeting at the mansion was set for the night. He needed to act. With each step toward the family mansion, memories of Maria haunted him. The thought that she had faked her own death for the sake of their child, while he remained oblivious to his anguish, was a poison stronger than any he could imagine. Guilt and anger swirled in a dangerous dance within him. How could he trust again? The shadows of his family were dissolving, revealing monsters he wished to ignore. Later, in the hall, adorned with glimmering crystals and portraits bearing enigmatic smiles, Ricardo positioned himself strategically. He intended to use the emotional fragility that these family gatherings always brought as a trap. Mauricio and Fernando arrived. The scent of cigarettes mingled with the aroma of polished wood, creating a surreal atmosphere. They appeared relaxed, as if the weight of the pain that had devastated his life had never existed. How insensitive could they be? Ricardo inhaled deeply, his gaze fixed on Mauricio. The mask of cordiality was about to crumble. He began discussing business, but the words were traps, each heavier than the last. Revenge tasted sweeter than any contract they could sign. The tension mounted, and Ricardo's voice grew firmer. "You and Fernando thought you could get rid of me just like that, didn't you?" Mauricio frowned, a mask of uncertainty on his face, yet Ricardo saw deeper. He noticed how Fernando stiffened like a cornered animal. The poison of deceit was about to be injected. "I know about your plans. Everything you tried to do to Pedrinho." The words rang out like a shot in the dark, the echo reverberating through the room. The reaction was immediate. Fernando attempted to steer the conversation away, but Ricardo already had the answer he sought. Discovering the betrayal felt almost too easy. He made a subtle movement, a barely noticeable gesture. The detective, hidden in a corner of the room, signaled. Solid evidence was on its way. The game was about to shift. Maria entered the hall precisely when emotions were running high. Time seemed to freeze. Mauricio's expression morphed into sheer panic, a sight Ricardo had longed to witness. The shock in his eyes was a tribute to the truth. She was there, alive and untamed, unmasking what had previously been unquestionable. The audience's murmurs reached a peak of disbelief. "You thought you could kill me and take everything, didn't you?" Maria fixed her gaze on Fernando. The weight of her words hit like a punch to the gut. "You didn't expect me to survive. But here I am." Mauricio's nervous laughter shattered the silence. He tried to reclaim lost ground, but it was futile. The evidence began to surface, dissecting each Machiavellian scheme. The web of lies they had woven couldn't withstand the pressure. The detective waved as the chief entered. The way the truth unfolded was undeniably satisfying. The sound of chains falling was a spectacle that lightened Ricardo's spirit. The burden he carried was being cast aside, a relief that resonated throughout his body. As the brothers were taken into custody, a collective sigh of relief filled the air. The poison had become an antidote. Maria and Ricardo found each other amidst a whirlwind of emotions. The embrace was cold, laden with a pain that echoed louder than the joy of reunion. Love had survived, but not without scars. Each mark was a reminder of what they had nearly lost. While Pedrinho played with Julia in the distance, Ricardo sensed a new weight on his shoulders. The trust and joy from before felt shattered, yet there remained flickers of hope. And within him grew the certainty that he had not only fought for his son's life, but also for his own freedom, for the chance of a new story. In that moment he understood. The truth can be painful, but the betrayal from those we love most is undoubtedly the deepest wound of all. The room was engulfed in a tense silence, a heavy air that felt suffocating. Julia's revelation echoed in Ricardo's mind. Maria was not dead. He had to act swiftly. The sinister details of a Machiavellian plot unfolded before him. His life, his family, everything was at the mercy of betrayal. He couldn't afford a mistake. The stages of the investigation advanced rapidly. Ricardo barely recognized his own routine. Hours morphed into endless nights, each conversation with the detective culminating in a new lead. Bank records, suspicious transactions, everything pointed to a single nebulous source known as his brothers, those who were supposed to protect him, yet were ready to pull the rug from under his feet. The clandestine meetings, the movements in the shadows, all led to the same treacherous bed. The minds of his brothers' greed lay hidden beneath the guise of familial love. At night, he found himself revisiting memories within his dreams. Maria laughing, Pedrinho running, and that ideal life which now felt like a mirage. Yet, as dawn broke, reality hit him like a punch to the gut. He couldn't let it consume him. Something was brewing inside, a fierce determination. That morning, he resolved it was time to act. The image of Maria's gravestone no longer paralyzed him. It had transformed into fuel. Family gatherings became a landscape thick with tension. Forced smiles and furtive glances masked the growing poison. While the brothers laughed, Ricardo observed. He understood their plans existed in completely different realms. The family excelled at the art of manipulation and deception, but he was now ready to expose them. By placing himself in a position of vulnerability, he was setting the stage for the final blow. Everyone wanted to see him weak, sad, yet he concealed his true strength. When the brothers hosted a dinner in his honor, it was more than mere generosity. It was strategy. The way Fernando pursed his lips while mediating conversation, the gestures Mauricio made, revealed more than they intended to hide. The poison circulating in the room was not just metaphorical. There was something real, tangible. He couldn't forget what he had uncovered about their plans, the inheritance that lay not just in money, but in lives threatened. Ricardo returned to his schemes. What he stood to lose was far greater than the hidden truth. As his brothers sought information, Ricardo fortified his network. His connection with Julia became another mainstay. She understood what few did, the urgency of confronting those we love who are capable of betrayal. He vowed that not a single stone would be left unturned. And then, when Maria finally appeared, the universe seemed to shift. The weakness he had feigned transformed into raw power. She rose like a phoenix, and the pain that once suffocated him morphed into relief. Her truth was a storm, and the sensation was alive, pulsating. Together, they possessed a narrative that defied the superficiality of blood ties. However, the truth came at a price. Once the police arrived, everything unfolded like a collapsing house of cards. The brothers, cornered and unmasked, could not escape the vulnerability they had once brokered in dark secrets. It resembled a scene from a Greek play, where characters, all in disguise, turned against one another as the light of truth illuminated the stage. The final confrontation left them all exposed, and the betrayal simmering between them finally turned into a clear warning. Ricardo looked at Maria, and in her eyes was a blend of sadness and liberation. Trust takes time to heal. The path ahead was dim, but together they were prepared to rewrite their stories. As the repercussions of betrayal began to unfold, life became a new timeline, marked by fresh promises, new challenges, and a renewed chance to find light at the end of the tunnel. One last glance at Julia, the girl who had been the key to it all. He knew she would always be a part of the story, a reminder that between love and betrayal lies a delicate line, a choice that could determine the fate of an entire life. Ricardo couldn't believe his eyes. Maria stood before him, right there, flesh and blood. The eyes he thought he had lost forever now sparkled with a life he believed no longer existed. His heart raced, but his mind, mired in conflict, hesitated. The brothers' reaction was instinctive. Mauricio and Fernando, caught off guard, exchanged nervous glances. For a moment the world seemed to freeze, as if time had bent to capture that monumental image. "Did you really think I was dead?" Maria's voice sliced through the silence, assertive, and challenging. The intensity of the moment stirred a storm within Ricardo. He longed to rush to her, yet he hesitated. What if it was a trap? What if it was merely a ruse to divert his attention? The detective, from a distance, scrutinized every movement, every tension hanging in the air, adjusting his glasses and noting everything with a pen in hand. This was a pivotal moment. The evidence he had gathered now began to take shape. "I lived a lie, and you, my brothers, wanted to take everything that remained," Maria stated, her voice laced with a blend of anguish and fury. Ricardo glanced at Mauricio and Fernando. Any trace of respect evaporated. What he believed to be familial love revealed itself as a tangled web of betrayal and dark schemes. Nothing was as it seemed. The truth laid bare. At that instant, he felt a surge of supernatural rage ignite within him. He didn't want to be the broken man mourning. He wanted to be the warrior, determined to protect his family. "If you had told me the truth." The words slipped out as a whisper thick with helplessness. But Maria cut him off. "And you? You let your pain blind. You, while I fought monsters at home, you only thought of your own suffering." The wounds were exposed. There was no room left for excuses or regrets. In utter desperation, Mauricio attempted to spin a narrative. "This is a conspiracy. You were never dead. This was all planned." The madness in his voice echoed through the room. Just then, a phone rang, shattering the tension. New information had arrived. The police were on their way, a fresh revelation that heightened the urgency. Julia, who had now become a pivotal figure, watched from afar. Her small yet deep-set eyes followed the unfolding scene with an understanding that seemed to transcend her years. The girl who had been the bridge between Ricardo and Maria was now a symbol of hope, a reminder that no one is alone in this cruel game of fate. "It's time to rewrite our story," Maria said, gently brushing her hand along Pedrinho's cheek as he approached cautiously. The presence of their son made everything more tangible. The little boy gazed in awe, unaware of the full stakes but sensing the tension in the air. Ricardo crouched down, cradling his son's face in his hands, making a silent vow. He would protect Pedrinho. He would do it for Maria, for them. The siren's lights began to slice through the darkness. The police were arriving, and the truth needed defending. Holding Maria's hand, Ricardo felt that even amidst the chaos, there was a spark of new life. Betrayal was being laid bare on a stage that had previously lacked transparency. But the game was far from over. It was merely a new beginning. "We are together now," he whispered, admiring Maria's resolve. She nodded, a faint smile forming on her lips. Yet there was still something more to confront. The aftermath of this internal battle, the lingering distrust, hung heavily in the air. Ricardo stood tall, locking eyes with his brothers. What was once familial had morphed into a lethal standoff. The power dynamics were shifting. The weight of betrayal demanded a toll, and he was prepared to pay it. The truth was a weapon, and they had the ammunition. "Today, justice will be served," he declared. The echo of those words reverberated through the air, signaling that at last, honesty and courage were taking the reins. The storm he had carried for so long began to dissipate. A new era of trust was on the horizon, where relationships would be rebuilt and shadows exposed. And as the police entered, the certainty that betrayal could not triumph over. The light forming between them solidified, love endured, but the battle was just beginning. The room was filled with a heavy silence. All eyes turned when Maria stepped inside. The air thickened, almost tangible. Mauricio and Fernando, poised for a fresh assault, stood frozen. The figure before them was not a ghost from the past, but a living woman, bearing the resilience of someone who had endured a nightmare. The tension crackled in the atmosphere. "You sought me out, didn't you?" Maria spoke, her voice steady, resonating like thunder. It was an act of bravery unexpected by all, and at that moment, the intricate web of lies began to unravel. The fragility of life and trust converged in that instant. The shadow cast by the brothers loomed like a lethal threat, yet their faces now appeared paler than the walls surrounding them. Ricardo stood torn between relief and anger. Tears of longing and fear fought to be contained. He thought, why didn't I trust her? Why didn't I fight for her? Sooner, it was a mistake gnawing at him. But now, in that moment, the monsters were laid bare, revealing their greed. Betrayal transformed from a whisper in the shadows to a monstrous scream echoing off the walls. "What have you done?" Mauricio managed to stammer. His previously confident voice now quivered. Fernando, on his part, tried to appeal to reason. "This isn't a good idea, Maria. You don't know what you're doing." But the woman standing there was no longer the prey. She had become the hunter. The police arrived, and the unfolding scene resembled a theatrical performance. The entrance of the authorities brought beams of light, illuminating every face in a tension that snapped like a wire ready to break. The brothers were handcuffed amid protests and manipulation attempts, but any effort at verbal games proved futile. The verdict had already been rendered. The weight of the recordings obtained by the detective fell upon them like a shroud of condemnation. "This is the truth you feared," Maria declared, her defiant gaze fixed on the men who were once her family. The confirmations of blackmail, fraud, and danger converged into one undeniable point: an insatiable thirst for power. Ricardo watched, feeling the adrenaline surge like a drumbeat, as if the essence of this moment resonated within his bones. He witnessed the cracks forming in their relationships, trust eroding like sand slipping through fingers. Yes, they could be imprisoned, but freedom came at a steep price. The love they wished to reclaim demanded a colossal effort. "We can rebuild this, right?" Ricardo murmured to Maria. The echo of his words went unanswered. The past still lingered like a specter, with every glance and every word forming a new chasm. The struggle to restore trust felt monumental, nearly impossible. As the storm subsided, a heavy silence settled. They were no longer just a couple, but two scarred souls. Love had endured, yet certainty hung in the air. What had once been pure now bore deep scars. The sanctuary had transformed into a battlefield. When Julia appeared beside Ricardo, she simply smiled. "You did it, Mr. Montero," she said, her tone suggesting wisdom beyond her years. He realized he could not overlook the significance of that girl in their story. Without her, the truth would have remained buried, obscured by pain and denial. Love endures, but betrayal nearly extinguishes it, he thought, absorbing every word that reverberated in the room. The future was uncertain, yet he now understood the value of the quietest voices, those no one dared to hear. "Let's move forward," he resolved, his gaze fixed on Maria as if this gesture were a declaration. The path ahead would not be easy, but the goal was clear: a new life. Each step would bear witness to the struggle they had faced. "Are you ready for this journey?" Maria nodded, a renewed spark in her eyes. It was a signal that, even amidst countless scars, hope still thrived. The truth emerged, rising like a beacon. The tale wasn't over. It was merely the dawn of a new chapter. And love, despite everything, remained the most potent force of all. If this story has resonated with you in any way, then subscribe now to No Mercy Badge and hit the notification bell. Leave a like if this journey touched you. Share it with someone who needs to hear this, and let me know in the comments. Do you believe love can survive such betrayal? Or are some wounds destined to never heal? And now, on your screen, 2 more videos are appearing. Click to watch now and continue this journey.